Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's live panel discussion. My name is Mike Reisenauer. I'm a communications manager at Perfecto. I'll be moderating today's panel. Our goal today is to discuss kind of what matters right now, what's on everybody's minds. And we've got some great experts to talk about this, but before I introduce them, just a few quick items. First, at the bottom of your screen, you'll find a few widgets, for lack of a better term. When you have questions for the panel during the webcast, you can just click the Q&A widget and type in your question. We'll answer as many as possible when they occur, or other ones we'll reserve for the end of the webcast, where we'll have more of an open Q&A. Second, if you have any questions or about tech, or you need any support, please click the help button. Third and finally, we'll email the link to the recording of this discussion within the next day, so you'll have a copy for your team and for your records, etc. So with that, let's introduce our guests, our trio of experts today. First off, we've got James Michael Bach. James is a founder and principal consultant at Satisfice, a software testing and quality assurance company. For 15 years, he's traveled the world teaching rapid software testing skills. James is the author of Lessons Learned in Software Testing and Secrets of a Buccaneer Scholar: How Self-Education and the Pursuit of Passion Can Lead to a Lifetime of Success. Michael Bolton is a consulting software tester and testing teacher who helps people solve testing problems they didn't realize they could solve. He's flown over 1 million miles and taught in 35 countries on 6 continents in the service of that goal. He is co-author with James Bach of Rapid Software Testing, a methodology and mindset for testing software expertly and credibly in uncertain conditions and under extreme time pressure. Eran Kinsbruner. He's Chief Evangelist and Senior Director at Perfecto. He's the author of the 2016 Amazon bestseller, The Digital Quality Handbook, which kicked off his trilogy of books on software quality. He's an international speaker, blogger, and also a patent-holding inventor. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. Let's jump in and kick this off. So, as anyone that's signed up for this understands that our kind of overall topic today is what is good testing in 2021. So let's kick off by starting with that question. So first question is to James. You've been in the industry for James and Michael. You've been in the industry for decades, both as practitioners and as consultants. What's different about testing right now compared to 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Oh, well, a couple of big things that are different, just I would say in the last 5 years, is the amazing prevalence of talk about AI and also about RPA, which I only learned what RPA meant maybe 6 months ago. And I always forget what it is.
Robotic
process automation. Yeah, robotic. I keep wanting to say remote. No, it's robotic process automation, which I had to look into as part of my work with Tricentis, and I found out that, oh, I get it. It's just like what people call test automation, but it's for everything, not just for testing. Everyone's discovering the amazing miracle of being irresponsible about your work by trying to automate things that shouldn't be automated. Okay. So that's becoming a rising big thing, process automation and AI. And certainly the drum beats for those things have gotten much louder in the last few years. But another thing has also become really a big deal in the last 5 years, and that is security and data privacy. People's sensitivities about that have gone up, but more than that, laws have now happened. And as you know, if you work in a large company, you know that you're being forced to go to training about protecting personal data of your customers, what is acceptable use of data. So on the one hand, you have this rise of like, oh, let's just make machines do everything so that we don't have to think about it. And on the other hand, you have, whoa, watch out about all these little landmines that if you step on, your company is going to be fined millions and millions of dollars. So with those two things, that has really changed in the past a few years. To me, that may shift the need for testers, the need for them to be aware of these certain systemic issues. But at the same time, it's put a lot of pressure on us to stop testing because of the AI and all this, because of the automation and all this. Testers are under constant pressure to stop using their human judgment and somehow find a way to turn it into an algorithm. But we keep finding, you keep seeing in the news that the algorithms fail. They fail over and over and over again. Self-driving cars, failure, for instance. The hype is finally starting to rot and peel off the front of the whole self-driving car thing. And we find out that, oh, it turns out it's not only really hard to do, it's so hard to do that no one's done it. There isn't a self-driving car yet, except in very, very, very restricted circumstances. But testers already know this. Testers already know that this fancy technology that's supposed to do incredible things is mostly held together with duct tape. And
some testers know that.
We are put under tremendous pressure to get out of the way of continuous delivery. So that is a huge challenge to testing, to companies, to anyone who cares about testing. It seems like what we have to be as testers is we've got to be tremendous advocates and very assertive advocates of testing, or else the teams will sweep us away. And I'm definitely seeing that inside the group I'm working with at Tricentis, where I'm not actually a tester. I'm a designer designing a test tool at Tricentis, but I'm working with a tester. And guess what? I have to defend that tester. I have to defend other testers in Tricentis so that they aren't bullied by all the people that want to say, we need to ship. We need to ship, just automate everything.
That's the biggest problem that we're seeing, I think, is that some testers do realize that we need to be critics, that we need to be advocates for the possibility that there could be trouble. What I'm seeing, and which is pretty disturbing, is that testers are being, as James suggests, bullied into the idea that it's their job to write algorithms for showing that the product works okay. And that's a big mistake. It's a big mistake for exactly the same reason that it's a big mistake to try to believe that the automation of self-driving cars is easy and straightforward. What we're looking for, apparently, according to certain managers and to certain floggers of test tools, is self-driving automation or self-driving testing. Self-driving testing isn't going to work any better than self-driving cars are going to work.
That's a perfect analogy.
Self-driving testing. It is not going to work because both driving and testing are social enterprises that to a casual observer look like mechanical exercises. They're not. That's the mechanical parts are the easy parts.
What's the middle way? What's the middle way? So we've,
middle of what?
So I would say the middle through the middle way through this conflict, right? So I think that when we
conflict between what?
So
define the conflict.
So automating things and security and data privacy, and then how do testers find a middle way through that? Because I don't think you would find too many people who would be saying, automation is bad, algorithms are bad, right? I think that they're not all bad, right? There's value there.
They're neither good nor bad, Michael. They're neutral. They are agnostic. They are extensions of whatever we are. So if you are a skilled tester, then tools will help you to be a more powerful, more extensive, faster, skilled tester. If but the tool doesn't care whether you're good or bad. And I think one of the big mistakes we think is tools good or tools bad. It's not the case. Tools accelerate and amplify whatever we are. So it's not a question of a middle way. It's a question of, what do we want? Do we want to understand problems in the product that threaten its value? If we want to do that, then tools can help us make observations. They can help us to collect data. They can help us to manage data. But what tools cannot do is make decisions about good or bad because of that social competence issue that I mentioned.
Michael, I think there is a middle way, though, because I think that he just may have misstated what the two sides are. Usually, one side is automate everything, keep humans out of it. Continuous delivery goes unhindered like a fire hose right directly to the open mouths of our customers. That's one side. And the other side is humans testing manually, which is taken to mean everything is experiential testing of being on the keyboard, and you have written test cases that humans follow. Maybe a whole bunch of people are following these written test cases. Nothing is automated. Now, our reaction to that would be that that's a false comparison because nobody actually is advocating an army of people using the product without any help of tools at all. No one advocates for that, but lots of people advocate for automate everything. Lots of people do. We're fighting them all the time. But then they falsely characterize our position as, I am going to use Amish woodworking tools to test this product and nothing more than that. And that's not our position at all. Our position is that human responsibility is not a middle way. It's the only responsible way. And responsible human testers absolutely use tools. We use tools in many interesting ways. But one thing I never do is I never say that the tool is doing the testing. I never cede my responsibility to the tool. That's a really crucial thing. It's kind of like if you're a parent and you're watching your child, you might do lots of things to supervise a child, but you always know, I am responsible for the safety of this child. And that's a sacred thing as a parent. And there's a line we don't cross, and we constantly are managing that line. What is irresponsible parenting? What is responsible parenting is what we all have to think about. And it's the same thing with testing, and it's the same thing with management and many other fields as well.
James, I just want to comment. I think that the last statement was exactly what we see in the past few years. Going back to the original question, what's changed? I think that the time is much shorter today, so everyone kind of chases a deadline, and they're not really chasing the quality criteria anymore. Okay, I have a sprint of 3 weeks. We need to get everything done in 3 weeks. Okay, so what can the tool do for me so I can match these timelines?
Right,
okay?
right.
And that's a huge problem. And the tool
it's a huge problem. Yes.
Yeah.
They say we can't have you do responsible testing because then we won't make our deadline that we totally arbitrarily made up. So what else can we do if we can't be responsible?
And by the way, Jeff, they're saying it in parallel when they're trying to test things that are more advanced than what the tool can actually support. When you look at the gap today, there are tools that simply cannot automate, or you talked about RPA and AI. There are tools today that are still not mature enough to cope with all the advancements of, smart, sophisticated chatbots and 5G and smart cities connecting to these different devices. It's very complicated. So I think that's one of the things that currently are putting a huge risk on quality. And I think we as, influencers, we need to really touch this point, because it's not the tool that judges or decides on the quality. It's the testers, and the testers can be the developers. We talked a lot about, everyone is talking about shift left and the dev persona and the test persona. Everyone is doing testing. Everyone is responsible, but it's not the tool that is responsible.
I have a heuristic to offer the audience, which is how to think about AI. And I actually got this from a guy named Venkatesh Rao from his Ribbon Farm podcast, his blog. He's such an insightful guy. And he turned me on to the idea of, here's how to think about an AI tool. Think about it as if it were a child. Anything that you're asking AI to do, imagine you've asked a very precocious 9-year-old to do it. So I can definitely imagine a 9-year-old saying to a 9-year-old, hey, 9-year-old, hey, try testing this and see if you can find bugs here and here and here. But what you wouldn't do is say, oh, well, my prepubescent child stopped watching cartoons and playing video games for an hour and tested the product, so I'm sure it's tested now. You wouldn't rely on that person's work, but you would certainly accept if they found a few bugs, you'd take a look at them. You'd say, oh, thanks for finding these. So the key thing is not to rely on the work that a magical AI tool has done, but just to take that in consideration and appreciate what it can do for you. So that's my little mental trick of saying this AI is a child, helps me put it in perspective.
I also like to think of AI as a mirror. Too often we try to use it as a lens to try to focus on certain things and to make decisions and so on. But I think it's a lot more productive to think about it as a mirror that shows us what we're like and shows us the extents and limits of what we have programmed into it and how we selected it. If we look at it as a with my perpetually glass half full view of the way we look at things, if we look at it as something that can highlight what we've missed about our own analysis, then we're in considerably less danger from it, I think.
Can you help me understand this analogy better, man?
Sure.
I'm trying to think. Facebook is not letting me into my account because it says that there's something suspicious. How is that a mirror?
If we treat that, the error that the AI is making as a reflection of our simplistic, oversimplified, algorithmatized take on what constitutes a security risk, or more importantly, a mortgage risk or a recidivism risk, if we analyze the output of the AI rather than depending on the output of the AI, then we'll learn something about ourselves and about the products that we've created. But if we have to look at it critically.
You're saying that the failures of AI, as we try to use these tools, help us understand how we've oversimplified the problem.
Precisely.
Oh, that could be
precisely. And we have to look at that from the perspective, from the fundamental belief that it's going to be wrong in important ways. We've got it as this is the thing that I think I can't say that it's changed over the last 5 years because I think it's always been around. The problem is that testers need to be critics. They need to believe fundamentally in the existence of trouble. We need to be looking for problems. And one thing that has changed, I think, is that the forces that Eran and James and I have described have emphasized a bad thing in testing. And the bad thing is it's our job to show that the product works. It's not our job to show that the product works. There's way too many people working from that assumption. The product is a good thing. It's our job to question that assumption. It's our job to try to falsify the assumption that everything's okay. And to the degree, one thing that I see is that having got worse in the last 5-10 years is that assumption was never really terribly well honored, and it's being less and less honored now. The belief that our job is to find trouble.
So that's a great point. So we've got a great question from Tom, and which transitions us into this next topic quite naturally. We're talking about AI and tools and automation, and Tom is asking, what are the skills that are required for people to drive the tools? And he says it seems like that hasn't changed very much in my mind, and that kind of brings us into our next question, which is, what defines a good tester right now?
Somebody whose job is not to drive the tools, but somebody whose job is to find the problems in the danged product, and in the relationship between the product and the people who use it. So we employ tools, but I think a big mistake is to make the application of tools the focus of our job. That puts the cart before the horse. What constitutes a skilled tester? A skilled tester is one who thinks critically about software. A skilled tester is a skilled analyst. That is to say, somebody who can decompose the product and the relationship between the people around it into things that are tractable and understandable. A skilled tester is one who makes maps, not literal cartographic maps, but mappings of the product and its relationship to quality criteria. So another aspect of an excellent tester is somebody who can identify lots and lots and lots of different aspects of quality and lots of different dimensions of quality, and who can recognize that a good quality in one dimension is not necessarily good quality in another dimension, and may in fact be at odds with good quality in another dimension. A good tester is somebody who has the skills of manipulating the product, of entering the user's world, alienating himself or herself from the builder's community that they're immersed in, estranging themselves from that, and exploring the worlds of the people who actually use the product and the people who are intending to get value from it.
Wait, Michael, you just used the term alienation in regards to projects. A lot of people are going to be thrown by that because that's a sociological concept that you're using.
Bring it.
So what do you mean by alienation exactly? You better explain that.
I meant estrangement.
We're all supposed to be on the same team. Aren't we all supposed to be on the same team, Michael? Now you want me to alienate myself from the team? What part of the Scrum handbook do I hear about alienation?
The thing we have to do is to distance ourselves to some degree from the rest of the builders of the product so that we can obtain critical distance from the product and from the builder's mindset. Critical distance is a distance between two perspectives that allows us to see the product and its relationship to its users from a different eye from the builder's mindset. To focus on the possibility of problems rather than envisioning success, to anticipate potential failures in it. We've got to be able to do that, or we will be lulled into the same mindset as the people who are building the product, who, because of an absence of critical distance, are unable to see problems.
Michael, I would just comment on. I would just build on that. I think that and I've been a tester most of my career. I hope I know what I'm talking about. But I think that when you talk about a good tester, especially these days, and we talk about agile and shift left and all these buzzwords and RPA and AI, testers are not making the tools look better. Testers can use sometimes tools to help them be more productive. But testers, as you mentioned, needs to be as disconnected as possible from the objectives of development. They need to mimic and think like the end users. They need to be clean of assumptions. You know, I used to work with dev teams and also QA guys, and they say, yeah, I assume because 1, 2, 3 that it should work. Testers cannot assume anything, and they should really be curious and validate everything, because you know, assumptions are the mother of all, I would say, bad things.
James, I'll let you take this one.
One of the things that Michael and I do is we try to take common ideas that people have about testing, and then we try to go 2 levels deeper. And we did this on assumptions once. Michael and I had a 3-hour conversation about assumptions. We realized we make assumptions all the time. Yeah. We refine what you just said, Eran, because I think I know what you mean, to say we want to avoid making reckless assumptions. We want to be careful about our risky assumptions. We want to embrace the safe assumptions, but also be careful about what we put in the safe assumption category. And then we want to make sure we make all necessary assumptions. And then he and I had this whole lecture on what the difference is between those 4 categories of assumptions. I think that's what you meant. I think you were referring to risky assumptions, and I think you were probably referring to what many people think are safe assumptions, but which turn out not to be safe assumptions. But in fact, there are, of course, many assumptions that we have to make, or else we won't be able to make any progress at all. Like, I assume that my teammates actually want the project to succeed. I'm not going to question that every day. Because it's going to completely erode the team dynamic if I question that assumption, even if it's actually a questionable assumption, even if there is somebody on the team who's trying to make the project fail. Actually calling them out on that might not be the best thing to do. So this is an example of how in our work we try to. There's a lot of just broad things that are about good testers that turn out that when you really think about them, they become very nuanced and complicated. And the whole idea of assumptions is one of those things. So I think, Eran, that what you just said is a sort of a headline. It's sort of a sentiment. And then beneath that, there's a lot of fine print, isn't there, about, okay, not every assumption is bad, and
exactly, because, you know, we talked about, you know, unfortunately, the reality today is that you have a given time frame to do testing, to create test cases, to do manual and exploratory testing. So you do need to be picky about, you know, which assumptions or no assumptions are guiding you when you are developing or actually performing your test cases. So yes, there is a risk. Yes, you cannot test the software to its maximum coverage and stuff like that. I think that's kind of a pitch, but also kind of a challenge that we see today that, in my mind, the tools cannot solve on their own.
Absolutely.
There needs to be a strategy behind that.
We have a good question. We have a really good question from Sarah, and we've talked kind of high level about skills of testers and how they should be thinking, and more like traits and some of this. But she has a very pointed question. What are your thoughts on the trend to no longer hire dedicated testers and instead rely on developers? So we know that Shift left.
It's a terrible idea.
What do you think of the
idea? It's a terrible idea that is pushed by people who do not know anything about testing, and it's become possible because the testing community has become so weak that it's not able to explain why anyone would need testers.
What do you think about the idea? What do you think about the idea of having newspapers with no editors? We just have writers submit stuff, and then they print it. What do we think about the idea of having governments with no ombudsman? You know, you just have to do what the government says, and that's that. What do we think about the idea of having a medical community where there is nobody questioning the work of doctors? What do we think about that idea? What do we think about science, where it's a job, it's not the job of science to falsify hypotheses. We just go with whatever. I mean, it's a terrible idea not to have critical thinking involved with any kind of discipline that involves risk or danger,
Well,
lots of harm.
I have a specific thing that my brother told me the other day. My brother works at eBay, and he was complaining about the sentiment that everyone's job is testing. Like, well, testing is everyone's job. He said his reaction when he hears that is he says, "What do you want me to do? What specific thing do you want me to do when you say testing is everyone's job? Do you want me to stop development, stop administration, stop having meetings, and just test all the time? Do you want me to do some testing some of the time? Which testing do you want me to do?" And there's never an answer to that question. It's like, just do it. It's equivalent to saying something like, ethics is everyone's job. If you say ethics is everyone's job in a large corporation, you are not going to be the most ethical company in the world. You aren't going to be any different from any other company that never talks about ethics, because you have not stated, what do you want me to actually do? The whole purpose of having someone in the role of a tester is to know what to do and to put focus and effort and energy and commitment into those things.
And James, I agree with both of you, Michael and James. I think that, this statement is not even logical, because think about a squad of developers, okay? You have 5 developers in a feature team, a squad, whatever it's called, okay? Each developer is writing or doing like 6, 7, 8 pull requests a day. Do you think that he has the time or ability to test the other developers' code when they are integrated?
It's crazy.
It's
but
impossible.
Wait,
this is not even close to the reality.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They have the time to test each other's code. No question about it. If somebody decides that they do. But here's what I want to ask.
But they won't take that time.
Well, they may or may not. It's unlikely, it seems to me, but they may. But here's the thing. If testing is everybody's responsibility, is developing skill in testing everybody's responsibility? Is focusing on testing everybody's responsibility? Is testing for things other than things that developers would be interested in everybody's responsibility? Is immersing oneself in the world of the end user everyone's responsibility? Is developing knowledge about the domain that an average end user doesn't have everyone's responsibility? Those questions don't get answered. They never even get asked. So
I can tell you, James, you mentioned that your brother works for eBay. I have a very good friend. She works at a research company. She's a developer. She's a very good developer. And she once told me, I never write bugs. I have no bugs in my code. Hence, testing is a nice to have. I'm so perfect. I'm not writing any bugs. So either she's
well, there you go.
Michael was saying, she has developed a skill set for testing within her daily job, unlikely, or something is totally broken here in the concept. But I think it's a strategic thing. It's a decision that is not. It shouldn't be made by a single developer or a single tester. This is an organization that is building product or products, and they need to have a quality strategy in front of them. And yeah, tools can be part of this strategy. Whoever is doing which test cases can be part of the strategy, but there needs to be some kind of a thought about who is doing what's good look like, okay? How am I releasing software on a daily basis each 3 weeks that we talked about? It cannot be just, who is doing the testing, whether it's the developer or the tester. This is a very low, it's not the right question to ask, okay? It's not who is doing the testing, it's how testing is being done, okay?
Well, I'm working right now on a team of 6 guys with Tricentis, and one of them is a dedicated tester. And I am technically not a tester on the team. I'm a designer. But I'm working with the tester and mentoring the guy as we go. He and I just spent 10 hours, approximately 10 hours in the past 2 weeks, just working on a test strategy with risks and a matrix associating the risks with the with the activities, and we've talked about this for about 10 hours. We are now ready to go back to the rest of the guys, rest of the team, and talk through our ideas about test strategy, talk about testability with them, talk about what their responsibilities are and what our responsibilities are. But I imagine if we'd had all 6 people on the team have that conversation all synchronously, all at the same time. It would be a tremendous investment of time. Instead, we had just the tester. Yeah, so instead, the tester and me, we did it, and now this is going to streamline everyone else's use of time. That doesn't mean that only we are responsible for testing, but we are responsible to organize the testing and to chart a path for the testing, and that's what we have done.
I think when somebody says X is everyone's responsibility, it now makes me believe that that's a bit of a dodge to say we want X to go away. we want it not to be a problem, and it's always a magical incantation, right? Ethics is everyone's responsibility. Testing is everyone's responsibility. They never say that about coding. They never say coding is everyone's responsibility. They never say management is everyone's responsibility. They never say HR is everyone's responsibility, right? Hiring is everyone's responsibility. You never hear that because there's an acknowledgement that things like coding and management and human resources and that sort of thing might require some degree of skill or knowledge or experience or dedication.
Guys, we have a good question here from one of the attendees. We have lots of great questions, so keep them coming, everyone. We're going to try to get to the questions in the last 15 minutes. But the question is, how do you convince management that we need dedicated testers and not simply a bunch of automators? Not to reduce that skill set at all.
Tell stories.
Yeah.
Go ahead, James.
One of the things you got to do is you got to watch carefully what's happening with your own product in the field and make sure that management is aware of the pain that the organization is actually suffering. Because sometimes there's a sort of morphine that's preventing management from being aware of what's happening. But another thing is Michael and I collect news stories from other companies that have gotten into the news with their bad software. And we say, hey, we don't want to have this happen to us, do we? I mean, this is happening all around the industry. Let's not have it happen to us. We can learn from these other companies' mistakes. So that's one way. I mean, you can have a philosophical conversation about testing kind of the way we've been doing right here. But the idea of stories of specific failures that have happened that we never want to have happen again, that's usually much more persuasive.
Google your own company's name along with sucks or problems or bugs, and you will very quickly find out all kinds of things that management has not been paying attention to, probably. Because they're not looking for trouble. It's our job as testers to look for trouble. And if trouble is invisible to management, then it's our job to make trouble more visible. Now, it used to be that management would get very upset about technical support costs. But they found a way around that, which is they got rid of technical support. They used to get upset about documentation costs, so they found a really good way of eliminating that problem. They got rid of documentation people. So now we've got developers doing documentation work, and developers didn't get into the development business to be documenters, so they don't do that very well. Technical support having been eradicated, well, the nervous system for the company, the thing that allows it to get information from the outside world, technical support, that's gone. So a great way, it seems to me, to identify the helpfulness of testing is to look for your company name here sucks on the web and see what that returns.
Juka Selendik just sent me a private message because she can't comment on the webinar. She says, show management what testing is doing and what problems are happening. Give them analysis reports of risks in the product, map it out for them, make it visual. And the reason why I would read what Juka Selendik says is because she's one of our former students who has become a colleague of ours, and she is implementing some really advanced, interesting test management stuff in her company right now. So she is actually an expert on this, so I felt like I should read that. Thanks, Juka.
Yeah, I've noticed Karen, who commented as well, said she would love to see a collection of code going wrong in the field stories.
That's a great idea. Great idea.
Our friend Gojko Adzik, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. One never knows. But Gojko released a book called Computers versus Humans, or maybe it's Humans versus Computers. And that's a lovely little collection of stories that testers can arm themselves with and can use to influence their own approaches to testing to look for problems like that. It's a charming little book full of all kinds of wonderful little disasters.
And Michael, James, I just want to add, because I actually love the thing that, giving real life examples, whether from your company or from the market. Since I'm doing a lot of mobile testing over the past almost 2 decades, I used to have what I called wall of shame. Okay. Every release of an iOS or an Android major release, I would take a bunch of enterprise applications and just take them for a ride and see how they behave. I used to take LinkedIn, LinkedIn, I live in this LinkedIn community, and you see it in the webinar. And I met with the testing team of LinkedIn 2 years ago, and they say, you know what?
They have a testing team?
That's a surprise, I know. And they're saying, yeah, we are only testing on simulators and emulators. But I told them, listen, I see all the bugs on my real smartphone. Why aren't you doing testing like the real users? No, we are automating and doing a lot of things on.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
LinkedIn has the worst. LinkedIn has classically been the absolute worst system of all the social media systems. Although I have to say, in the last 2 years, it's gotten significantly better. They must have done a redesign of it, but it used to be unusable. And these guys were saying they weren't even trying to use it. Come on, guys.
So there's a sobering thing in that. There's a sobering thing that we have to reflect on as testers in that. Do people really care that LinkedIn's user experience is, to a very great degree, a hot mess? They've got lots and lots of users. So what's our reply to that?
It's gotten a lot better, though. Haven't you think LinkedIn's gotten a lot better in the last couple of years? I think I'm actually using it now because they added some critical features and made it so. They used to have this feature where if you ever did anything on LinkedIn, you would never see it again and you'd never be able to find it and you'd never be able to find a comment you ever made. They've solved that problem. I can actually find a comment that I've made on LinkedIn. So they haven't hashed it out of existence the way their old UI used to do. You can edit a comment once you've made it. It has gotten better. So somebody at LinkedIn, I'm sure, made a stand. And I want to say, whoever that anonymous person is, thank you for making your stand and going on your hunger strike that you went on for 3 days until they decided they were going to redo that system.
James, this is where we rest our point, right? You gave LinkedIn feedback. LinkedIn is kind of sometimes being tested by the community. We are the end users doing the testing for LinkedIn because they don't have internally that many real-life testers. LinkedIn is being used by millions of people, and they are getting this feedback, this wall of shame that I mentioned earlier, and this is how they are improving it. But it should be kind of being fed from the inside, and that's the role of the testers or the testing team, again, if it exists.
So, gentlemen, let's move on to the next topic. I'd like to cover it for about 5 minutes, and then we've got lots of questions from the audience that I would love to cover in the last 10 minutes as much as we can. And maybe we'll do a little bit of a round robin on that. But let's talk about, Eran mentioned LinkedIn and the using VMs. What I'd love to talk about right now is tools. So it has been a underlying thread in all of our discussion, but what are tools good for? What am I looking for in a tool? What are my focus areas? And Eran, I'd like to ask you to lead that one off.
So I think, and I think we are all in agreement that tools enable or can enable testers to move a bit faster. Okay, tools are driven by human. Tools needs to meet the objectives of the testers and not vice versa. Okay, so let's say I'm a tester and I want to test LinkedIn. Sorry for using LinkedIn so much, but let's say this is the platform under test for now, and I want to test this platform. The tools that I want to select or pick needs to adhere to what I have as an objective. One of the objectives can be it needs to scale to, I don't know, 1 million users a day. I need to be able to edit the comment once I made it. Okay, I need to be able to share an image. By the way, using images within LinkedIn sucks. Michael Bolton said, look for examples from the media product. So I'm almost continuously unsuccessful of testing LinkedIn with uploading media files, images or videos. If a tool can help me validate this thing works, this feature works time after time, then the tool matches its purpose, but it's just closing or helping me satisfy a specific requirement. That's all. So that's one way of looking at that. The other thing, and I think that's one of the major driver today for using tools and buying tools, okay, it's the agility, the velocity, okay? We talked about it earlier. I don't have all the time in the world. I need to move fast. Tools might be able, I don't want to use, James, the magic stuff here, but tools might be able to bring me from one point to the next in a much shorter time, okay? So that's another aspect of using that. And the last one, which I disagree, is the budget. Okay, people say, okay, doing the things manually or using testers to do X, Y, Z, cost me that amount of money. If I was using a smarter tool, I could have saved hundreds of, or millions of dollars. And that's not the right comparison or objective. Yes, tools have their purpose, and money is also always an issue. With testing, we know that, but we need to understand where it's coming from.
I would say a tool is an extension of whatever we are. A tool accelerates, enhances, extends, enables, amplifies, intensifies something that we're doing. And it does so while systematically not doing a whole bunch of other things. So the first thing we've got to keep in mind as we engage with tools, as we use tools, is to reckon what the tool is accelerating and intensifying and then extending and enabling, and recognizing that it does that in all directions simultaneously. So at the same time as it allows us to accelerate the processing of transactions, let's just say, it also systematically blinds us to the detail associated with each one of those transactions. So no problem using a tool as long as we recognize the limitations of the tool along with its capabilities, because to the degree that it allows us to do one thing, it distorts our experience, our engagement, our interaction with the product. And that can be a really good thing, but it can also limit us in other forms of observation and perception that we might have. Cars are fantastic. They get us from place to place really quickly, don't they? until zillions of people are using cars, and now we've got traffic jams. So we've got to be alert to the effects of our tools, and not just the positive ones, not just the ones that Eran was pointing out. People tout speed isn't everything. Attention to potential problems, it seems to me, is the most important stuff.
The project that I'm working on now is a tool that helps the human tester become superhuman. That's what we want. I want a tool that helps me remember what I did. I want a tool that helps remind me of what I need to do without dominating me. I need a tool that helps me tell the story of testing, or to help a whole group of people tell the story of all the testing that's happened. So this is not the tool I'm working on right now is not primarily a tool to automate, although it has automation aspects to it. It's a tool that becomes a sort of Iron Man suit for testers, where your senses are enhanced and your mind is enhanced. It's an IDE for testers, is what we are creating. And one of the things, if you know anything about development, you know that when you use an IDE as a developer, you don't feel trapped. You don't feel claustrophobic. You feel like you're riding a magic carpet of power, and you can travel anywhere on your magic carpet. We want a magic carpet for testers that gives you access to the world. That's the vision of the project I'm working on right now on Tricentis. And this is totally different from, as far as I know, what any other test tool company is trying to do right now. Think about it this way. Every other test tool company is using this as a slogan. They're saying, we make testing easy. What I'm trying to do is not make testing easy. I'm trying to make testers powerful. That's a fundamental difference in perspective. Think about that.
Yeah, I agree with you, James. I love that, and I think, you know, what you're saying and what Michael was saying about, I think the key word here is extend the tester's ability. And, you know, with Perfecto, we have a cloud of, you know, hundreds and thousands of real devices, smartphones and tablets, okay? They are not doing the testing for the testers, but if a tester needs to test, again, LinkedIn across all the Android and iOS smartphones and browsers in the world, he cannot do it on his own local environment. He needs to scale, and this is where the tool extends his ability to really get more quality visibility into his local workstation.
So, gentlemen, let's move to Q&A. So we have about 5 minutes left. Let's give like 3-word answers or 5-word answers to as many of these as we can. Okay. I'm just gonna pick a couple here. Yeah, they're about 90. So everyone, thank you.
Listen, just read them off, rapid fire.
Yeah,
let's go.
Okay. You said that testing is not everyone's responsibility, which I understand. What about quality being everyone's responsibility?
No, it's management's responsibility. Next question.
Discussion alluded to agile development. We struggle with making testing a part of this development. What are your thoughts on incorporating testing in agile development?
How is testing not a part of agile development? How is testing not a part of any development?
Yeah. Of course it's part. Next question.
What would be an acceptable ratio between manual versus automated testing, or is there one at all?
It's a meaningless question. Totally meaningless question.
Testing is neither manual nor automated.
What's a better question?
A better question would be, how shall all testers on the project, including ones who specialize in using code, apply tools to the task of finding problems that matter?
Yeah. What's your tool strategy? Yeah.
So we've got a lot of quite a few questions. I'll just kind of batch them up, but they're really around risk mitigation and who owns the risk. Does testing own the risk?
Management owns the risk. Management is the only people who can own the risk. They're the only ones who can. Everyone else is a functionary compared to management, which is the fundamental purpose of management is to take responsibility for the business, and it's a business decision. Risk is always a business decision. What I do as a tester, what my responsibility is to make the risk picture clear to management so that they can make the decisions that they need to make.
By the way, I want to say this about the rapid fire questions. How about we do this? How about we set up something? I'm going to leave it to Eran and Michael to set up something on LinkedIn where these questions can get aired and we can answer them. I've got a difficulty. I would volunteer to do this. I've got a difficulty. I'm on vacation for the next week and a half, but I'm committed to answering any question that anybody has about testing. Michael at developsense.com, James at satisfice.com. We're both crazy interested in doing that all the time, not just on this occasion.
But so it's fun to shout out answers anyway.
Yeah,
yes, it is. Let's do a few more.
We'll never get through them all, but I do think that let's take this conversation into the community. So, who is testing AI and RPA? Isn't that something to consider and focus on?
We hope smart testers are doing it, but who knows?
Who's testing it? I'll tell you one thing that I can tell you this with absolute assurance about AI. This whole test case business is not going to work. The idea of having canned questions for testing AI won't work.
I have tested AI, and it is a really interesting, sophisticated, interactive activity. I didn't boil it down to test cases either.
Thoughts on no-code or low-code testing?
Testing is not about code, and the no-code products are not no-code. Stop bullshitting us. Stop bullshitting us. It runs on a machine. There's code. It's not no-code testing. It's just very high-level code.
I think what they mean by no-code, to be fair, what they mean by no-code is that you don't have to write streams of text to control something. Instead, you poke at buttons to control things. Personally, I think it's much easier to learn to code and do API testing than to try to learn Postman. I find Postman incredibly complicated, and I'd rather just use my coding skills to do that. Thank you. It's so much easier. So,
which also doesn't mediate the experience that a developer will have when trying to use that API. Right? If you're going to test something, an API, test it like a programmer would test it. The programmer in that case is the user.
And I would just add on top of that, because all of these questions, no code versus code, AI, who is responsible, we also need to think with the continuous and the end in mind, because testing has a life cycle, okay? You're not doing testing just once. You're doing it X amount of times a day, a week, and you need to continuously maintain them. So when you're talking about no code versus code and, AI-driven testing, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, these test cases needs to somehow be always valuable, always maintainable, always running, and need to be up to date with all the changes that you have applied. And this is one of the challenges that I see today. You are able to generate the code or low code or no code, but how do you keep up with all the changes? That's one of the struggles that I see today.
And how you do that is to stop thinking of testing as test cases and start thinking of testing as an investigation of the product, for which occasionally a test case might be useful. But let's not confuse testing with automated checking, which I think is what you're talking about, Eran, and that's a reasonable problem to consider in automated checking. We reduce that problem a lot when we reduce our obsession, our fixation with automated checking. And I think it might be helpful to push that in the direction of the developers a little more than they've been commonly afforded the opportunity to do.
Agreed.
Last question, we'll do a quick one around for everybody, and then we're going to sign off. But what are you looking forward to in the future about testing? Big question.
I'm looking forward to the day when we have a critical mass of testing craftsmen, craftspeople who will stand up for the craft. I think that'll happen someday. It hasn't quite happened yet.
I look forward to that. I look forward to recognition of the critic mindset as valuable, not just in testing, but in all aspects of society. The trouble is critics are to some degree honored in art and to some degree honored in science, but they're not yet honored in many other places. So I would love to see a tester's sensibility applied to things that we do to help prevent us from hurting people, to help to preserve value and to understand what we're doing in all kinds of domains.
I'll just build on top of what both of you said, and I think looking at the testers as a craft, as like an equal citizen, there are very many books out there, clean code and how to write better programming for Java and Python and all these things. Then if we have, you have written books yourselves, guys, and I've written books myself. It needs to be a profession that people are proud of, and they're making themselves always, heard, and they are an equal citizen within the development team, and they are not just being thrown, a new build. Hey guys, just take a new build, do your job, and no, they need to be an equal citizen. And testing is like an equal profession, like any other profession, whether you're doing it in Java, in code, without code, manual, exploratory, it doesn't matter. Testing is a standalone thing. And, for people who are asking, is AI going to take my job? Is RPA and robotic processing is going to take my testing job? The clear answer is no. James said it's a terrible idea. I agree with him.
Well, that's everyone. Thank you so much. That's about all the time we have for today. What a lively and engaging discussion. I hope our viewers had a good time, and I hope our guests did too. Thank you so much, James and Michael and Eran, for joining us today. We'll send out a recording of this within the next 24 hours or so, probably later this afternoon. So
please send out links where people can send us questions too. We'd love to answer those.
Sure.
All right. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and happy testing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Bye.